Hi, I'm a first-year medical student, and today I want to share with you something that directly affects you. And that is that tobacco companies are likely paying people to make YouTube videos about smoking. These videos can be personal diaries, they can be movie clips, they can be fun gatherings, they can be people answering questions about what tastes good, what's less irritating, and there can be people talking about how smoking is not bad for your health. Now, these are not all videos, but hopefully by the end of my video, you'll be skeptical next time you see smoking involved in the video. Part of what I'm going to talk about is going to directly come from Becky Freeman and Dr. Simon Chapman's paper. This is actually still in press. It's not published, but I asked them and they gave me permission to cite this. So this might be very, very new and you might not have heard of this. Another part is going to be from Dr. Allan Brandt's lecture. And he's a Harvard professor who spent a lot of his time looking at the tobacco industry. What is the evidence? That was my first question. And are there historical precedents? The answer is yes. In the past, Walmart and Sony had paid advertising agencies to make blogs about how they've had positive experiences at Walmart and Sony. These are people who pretend that they're regular people like you and me, just writing a blog with no financial incentive. And it's not sincere and it's not authentic. It's part of what's known as buzz marketing. So in terms of are there historical precedents where companies have went online and misrepresented and misled? The answer is yes. There's something also very intriguing, which is that Becky Freeman and Dr. Simon Chapman of the University of Sydney did this study. Dr. Simon Chapman is one of the world's experts on tobacco control, and he found that of the top 50 videos viewed of all time, we were able to confirm that 6 were actually advertisements. What they did was that they tracked down these YouTube videos back to the original source, and they had to take all kinds of twists and turns, but they found that 6 of the top 50 videos of all time were actually advertisements. I also wondered, did tobacco companies target viewer audiences that were young in the past? And the answer is yes. In the 1980s, I think you may have heard about Joe Camel. And there's a famous study published in the Journal of the American Medical Association showing that young children were able to recognize the silhouette of Joe Camel as frequently as Mickey Mouse. That caused a huge media backlash, but RJR still stuck with Joe Camel. And the reason why was because they found that most of their smokers were either quitting, they were 55 to 65 years of age, or dying from lung cancer, heart disease, all the bad things that smoking causes. And they said specifically in their documents that they needed to target young audiences or else their company would go bankrupt. Going back to Dr. Chapman's study, I also thought it was interesting that they looked at the top 50 videos by relevance and by view count when they typed in the word smoking in the search box of the YouTube website. They found that most of the videos watched were either the pro-smoking videos or videos that had smoking imagery. And they were definitely not the anti-smoking videos. So what does this all mean? I want to be completely objective with you and say that none of what I have just previously said proves anything. And in fact, in this study by Dr. Simon Chapman, they point out none of the pro-smoking videos were readily identifiable as tobacco industry creations. But I think it's also important to note that it says here, however, given the industry's historical use of stealth marketing techniques, we cannot definitively say there's no tobacco industry presence on YouTube. What I hope to do in the next 2 minutes is to convince you that that is a huge understatement. By taking you back to the 1920s and showing you how tobacco companies have always been one step ahead of the game in misleading people and tapping into people's concerns and fears and doing a really good job of creating doubt and marketing themselves.
If we take a time trip back into the 1920s and 30s, we'll see a lot of ads like this. This one is specifically targeted to women. You'll see that it says 20,679 physicians say Luckies are less irritating. And the reason why they mention that is because in the 1930s there was an idea that throat irritations cause cancer. So already, 90 years ago, tobacco companies were one step ahead of the game in trying to address concerns and trying to mislead. This slide is noteworthy because it shows sexual meanings. When Dr. Allan Brandt told us this, we all chuckled, but apparently, he said, in the 1930s, if you showed 2 people in a bed smoking cigarettes, it was a clear indicator of what had just happened. Perhaps not surprisingly, in the YouTube videos out there, a lot of the smoking imagery has sexual connotations and sexual meanings as well. Here in this ad, you see the industry focusing on the concern of smokers, even though they knew already that smoking caused very serious problems. And the way they did this focusing on the concerns is they showed doctor images of doctors saying that it's no problem, you don't have to worry. And this, I'm sorry to say, was in an ad in the Journal of the American Medical Association, one of the top journals in the world. The tobacco industries were putting these ads in there. One theme that you'll find often in these ads is this idea of individual personal responsibility. You decide if this is bad for you, and you take the responsibility and the consequences. It's a way for the tobacco companies to protect themselves from legal action, and it's a way to market this because, hey, we all want to believe that we can make our own individual choices. You'll find this theme in pro-smoking campaigns as well, and it's a great way that the tobacco companies use to make a lot more profits. The other thing that's significant about this ad is that it was placed around 1948, right around when Doctors Dahl and Hill were exploring and starting their research on tobacco smoke and whether or not that causes lung cancer. This was not a coincidence that the tobacco companies started placing these ads right around the beginning of these big research projects. This was in the 1950s. The American Medical Association fought against compulsory health insurance, and a lot of the doctors were unfortunately under the payroll of tobacco companies. The next two slides are going to be on filters, and as you can see, these slides say that the filters are much better for you. But all the way back in 1953, it is well documented that the researchers of the tobacco industry already knew that the filters did not take out the dangerous chemicals. They knew, though, that the filters can be changed to turn color upon smoking. And they found that in test groups, people believed that the filtration was most effective when it turns yellow or brown. And so even though the filters did not actually have any toxic reduction benefits, they found that it had commercial value and that they went ahead and made all these advertisements that were completely false and misleading. I brought up more of these slides just to show you how misleading the tobacco industry has been, and this has been a 90-year track record where the tobacco industry has always been one step ahead of misleading and misleading and misleading. If you want more information about these documents, you can go to the UCSF library website and the websites that I have posted.
This is a slide from the World Health Organization, and as you can see, the developing world is going to have more deaths related to tobacco smoke than the developed world. And this is going to be a huge problem by the year of 2030 in developing countries. It is already going to be a very serious problem in developed worlds, but it's going to be an even bigger problem in the developing countries as tobacco companies are moving to other places such as China and India to get more profits. I thought this slide was interesting because it shows how different countries have different ways of putting warning labels, and in Brazil it's very graphic, as with those of Canada. This graph basically shows that if smoking does not decrease, then in a century you're going to have an incredible spike of deaths. Hi, thanks for listening. I'm going to post up all the references and websites so that you can double check and triple check what I said, because I want to be as objective and as clear and as honest as possible. So what is the likelihood that tobacco companies are sponsoring a lot of these YouTube videos? Very high. The thing is, this is a likelihood. It's not proven, and so there's always question, there's always debate on the merits of what I just said. But I want, hopefully, everybody to know that back in the 1930s and 40s, people already knew that smoking probably caused cancer, that smoking likely caused cancer. But it wasn't until the 50s and 60s that they proved it. And then it wasn't until the 70s and 80s that the smoking companies, that the tobacco companies finally started to admit that they were behind suppressing information, that they're behind misleading people, and that they were hurting people through their misleading actions. And so please, if you can fine-tune my message, if you can prove what I said, if you can raise awareness or make better videos, please do that, because I think the message, the core of the message is right, it's accurate, and hopefully we can find a way to protect viewers from misleading information, misleading videos that are likely sponsored by the tobacco industry. Thanks.